Hi everyone, Michelle here from michellesmidheaven.com, and today I want to share my impressions of the total solar eclipse with the South Node in Leo. I'll take a look at the eclipse chart, which shows Venus in her own sign while Mars has just entered Cancer. I want to include all of that as well as Mercury and Jupiter. And last but not least, I want to address the Saros series that this particular eclipse belongs to because that often reveals a little more depth to our interpretation. Solar eclipses ripple through past, present, and future, and most of us have already been notified of the bigger story around this eclipse. Let's say since about the end of May, and some of us have yet to see its impact over the coming months. But of course, the actual eclipse itself, occurring on August 12th, is like a powerful new moon, but it's creating a lot more instability than your typical new moon. The light is a life force, so when that light is dimmed all of a sudden, it's not great for our health in general to begin with. So take extra care of your health, just making sure you get enough sleep or a little more sleep than usual. That would be great. And this is a South Node eclipse, which might add to the feeling that something is draining your energy. I have to say, it's making me kind of lazy or lazier than usual, but not in a bad way. It can be really nice, right? Some good old escapism. Why not? I really want to take a look at the entire eclipse chart and see what stands out. And what I'm noticing is that Mercury and Jupiter co-present with the eclipse see Venus in Libra from a whole sign sextile. Mercury is even just about to perfect that sextile. And to me, honestly, that looks like a really big blessing for this new beginning. Leo is a very creative sign, and I know creativity, that is such a general word, isn't it? And the entire chart is creation. So each sign is essentially creative. Human beings are creative, but in Leo, it's creativity in the sense of playful creation out of the joy of simply being and playing a role on the stage of this lifetime and realizing that life is play, that life is a game. It's a kind of fake it till you make it thing as well, and it's certainly not as serious as Saturn oftentimes likes to make us think it is. So, straight away, this eclipse might announce a new role for you. Being a role model for others, maybe, or losing yourself in a new role, a kind of role that is quite alien to you, something you never did before, something otherworldly, even, because that's how the South Node comes into play here. But in any case, it's a role that is played just for fun because keep in mind that both of the benefics are closely involved with the eclipse. And yep, Saturn is like over there in Aries, making a whole sign trine to the eclipse. But Saturn is a bit sleepy in his retrograde phase, so the other voices in the chart have a lot more to say in this case, I think. The eclipse with the South Node and with the benefics involved offers us a good kind of escapism. It's less practical, maybe, but more interesting and more bizarre, maybe, as well. I like to pay close attention to everyday stuff that arises in my environment because I often find it's telling me something about what's unfolding and often about what this reality is all about. So, choosing laziness over some urgent matters I needed to attend to, I read a book that someone had recommended me many, many years ago, and finally it caught my eye again in the library. It's a super well-known novel titled The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. It's the type of book you can read in one go, and it's packed with wisdom. The writer had studied alchemy for decades, and the story in the book is a symbolic story, but it's also uncomplicated and it resonated so, so much. It's about reading the signs of the world, which is amazing. That's what astrologers do, right? Anyway, one of the many gems in this book is the idea that we, in our experience as human beings, feed the soul of the world or the anima mundi. And consequently, life here on earth is bound to get better or worse depending on us getting better or worse. And I'm still paraphrasing this from the book, right? This is exactly where the power of love comes into play because, and this felt so true to me, when you fall in love with someone, you always want to be better than you are. So simple and so true. I love that. From that beautiful place of being in love, in the sense that you're in full solar admiration for someone, and the reasons don't really matter. You're automatically going to want to do your very best for that person, right? It's that easy. And when you're daydreaming about your person's amazing sense of humor and the sound of their voice and the wonderful trips you're going to make together and so on, you feel that warmth in your heart. And what you're doing is you're feeding the world soul with the most joyful possibilities. Becoming a better human being happens to be an activity that the Sun and Jupiter in Leo are very happy to support, as well as Venus in Libra. They are striving towards ideals. And you know what? If you can't find anyone to fall in love with, just make someone up. It works just as well. Yeah, so go for it. Your imagination is so much more powerful than you might think. As I explained in my last video, we're also keeping an eye on Mars because Venus and Mars are locked in a dance together as they started their cycle together with the Sun in the triple conjunction that happened earlier this year in January. For me, Mars is always the alchemist of the chart because he has the power to transform one thing into another, often through a painful process or some sort of crisis, but revolutionary change through conflict or crisis, and also the removal of obstacles to clear the path for something completely new. Mars as the pioneer, right? Well, Mars is done traveling through Gemini, a double-bodied sign, and with his transformative power, he was able to expose the two-edged sword, the two sides of an idea, the truth versus hypocrisy, the shadow side of communication, and so on. And the dynamic of Mars changing signs from Gemini to Cancer right before the solar eclipse, that I think is very revealing. From air to water, Mars falls into the consequences of what thoughts and words do to our emotional body. Mars the Alchemist now exposes how powerful thoughts and words really are. How are the signs and messages that you choose to pay attention to changing the way you feel? And to come back to what I think is a signature of this eclipse, it's not only about what kind of thoughts and feelings you are feeding your own body, it's about what you're feeding the world soul or the anima mundi. Cancer is a place of reflection. Everything is reflected there. Mars is holding up a mirror, and we have to look into it. It can be a painful process because it goes inward. In masculine Gemini, it's easy for Mars to move quickly under that blanket of fact, objectivity, and opinions that just come and go, dissecting thoughts and words, criticizing, debating, arguing. It was all happening on a mental level in Gemini's air. But now Mars falls in Cancer, reflecting everything back onto the inner emotional landscape. And that requires a different kind of courage because it's not always easy, right? To take a good, honest look at yourself. And strange things happen in Cancer. So the things that you would rather not take a look at appear in your environment anyway in a different form because the moon likes to give shape to things. Cancer is a pretty magical sign where dream reality and regular reality flow into one another in very mysterious ways. The moon governs sleep, and vivid nightmares are common when Mars travels through Cancer. Your own suppressed aggression can be mirrored, for example, by some seemingly unrelated violent event in your neighborhood. So it can be scary. Cancer is also a place where we're reminded of our roots, our past, our upbringing. And when Mars is rummaging around in that place, we discover old patterns, old emotions that are stuck in the body that Mars can actually help you get rid of. Not always pleasant, but definitely cathartic. Wherever Cancer is in your chart, take a moment to think of what kind of fears you have in that area of your life. Because if there's one lesson that I have learned from Mars time and time again, is that the anticipation of terrible events is far worse than the actual terrible event itself. Because in the moment when an actual crisis occurs, you find out that you're handling it all quite well, that the fear, in fact, just drops away. There is no fear in the moment. And Mars's ingress is important because it's in the moon sign of Cancer, and the moon is going to be eclipsed later this month on August 27th or 28th, depending on where you live. And that's going to be the last eclipse in Pisces until March 2034. So this will be bringing in some action into the water signs, which center around emotions, intuition, instincts, and how we absorb what's happening in our environment and so on. But first things first, the upcoming solar eclipse belongs to Saros 126. Each eclipse belongs to a family, you could say. A Saros series is an eclipse series that categorizes eclipses that occur under the same astronomical conditions. In other words, when the sun, the moon, and Earth are in the same positions in relation to one another, that's when the same type of eclipses occur. I go into all of that in my class, The Great Serpent, and I'll leave a link below if you're interested. But for the purpose of this video, I have cast this chart, which is the beginning of Saros series 126. And you could say this is like the natal chart of Wednesday's solar eclipse, and it dates back to the year 1179. So yeah, that's a really long time ago, but this root chart leaves its footprint, a signature. The current eclipse is embedded into this Saros root chart, and I'm sharing this so that you can keep in mind that the first eclipse of this series happened in Pisces. So if you have planets in Pisces, or if you have a lunar node or bending in Pisces, or if Pisces ruler Jupiter is important in your natal chart, don't be surprised if the Pisces and Jupiter areas of your chart will be activated as well. In any case, with a newborn Jupiter also co-present in the current eclipse, it's easy to see that Jupiter plays a major role here. So take a moment to consider all of the topics and themes that Jupiter represents in your natal chart, because that'll be activated. A new story is being written with your Jupiter as the protagonist, so to speak. Now, the last time we experienced a Saros 126 solar eclipse was on August 1st, 2008 at 9 degrees of Leo. So the Saros series always moves forward about a decan or 10 to 11 degrees. So if you can recall what happened in the summer of 2008, I'd love to hear about it. And usually we're not experiencing the exact same thing twice, right? But maybe it's just something that has a similar flavor to it. So let me know in the comments what's going on for you. I always love hearing from you. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more. My books are open for personal readings over Zoom, so get in touch with me through michellesmidheaven.com. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.